Don't come to Christmas. Your sister's in charge. My parents texted after I paid their debts. Welcome to another episode of Story Threads Podcast. My name is Emma, and today I'm here with Nicole, who came from Seattle, Washington, to tell us today's unbelievable story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Nicole, thank you for joining us.
Emma, thank you for having me here today. It all started with a message that arrived at 12:43 a.m., cutting through the darkness of my loft in downtown Seattle like a cold blade. Honey, we need to talk about Christmas. Your sister Chloe has organized everything perfectly, and she thinks it's best if you don't come. I froze, rereading the message as if the words could rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My name is Nicole Caldwell, I'm 34 years old, and I had just received the coldest message imaginable from the parents whose mortgage I paid off 6 months ago. Another ping. Chloe said your presence might make things awkward. She's inviting important people from her company. Please understand. Of course, Chloe had said that. My younger sister had always been the star of the family, the charmer who just needed time to find her way. Even when she dropped out of law school halfway through or racked up $60,000 on our parents' credit card on networking trips, they adored her. Meanwhile, I spent 15 years killing myself in tech, living in thrift store jeans and jackets, funneling every dollar into savings. When Mom and Dad almost lost the lake house because of Chloe's debts and their own bad investments, guess who they called? Me. I transferred $520,000 without batting an eye, emptying my investment account and selling the small rental property I had worked a decade to buy. We'll pay you back, Nicole. You saved us. That's what they said, crying on my shoulder. You're our rock. Now, half a year later, I was being uninvited from Christmas at the same house I saved because Chloe wanted to play hostess for her coworkers. Another message arrived. Chloe has planned a sophisticated evening. She has really blossomed into such an elegant woman. Blossomed. The same woman who called me controlling for asking when she would pay back the $8,000 I lent her. The same sister who accused me of being stingy for refusing to co-sign her 4th car loan after she totaled the previous 3. They called it keeping the peace whenever I held Chloe accountable. When I talked about responsibility, I was negative. I sat down at my desk and opened the safe. Inside was a thin folder they didn't know existed. 6 months ago, when I saved their house, my lawyer had insisted on something unquestionable. They were so desperate for help that they signed without hesitation. My phone vibrated again. This time I smiled. This time it was Chloe herself. Hi sis, I hope you understand about Christmas. My boss and his wife are coming over, and I need to make a good impression. You can be intense sometimes. Then came the addendum. But we can have lunch next week. Intense. Because at our last family dinner, I suggested she start paying our parents back instead of spending her salary on designer handbags. Because I mentioned that maybe changing jobs for the 3rd time in 2 years wasn't the best time to buy another luxury SUV. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed a single word in the family group chat. It's fine. Then I called my lawyer. Mark, sorry to wake you, but start the process. The house, he asked. Yes. No, I don't want to wait until after the holidays. I could almost hear Chloe's voice in my head, laughing, calling me dramatic, telling Mom and Dad I was jealous of her success. But I wasn't being dramatic. I was tired of being the quiet one. As I organized the paperwork that would change everything, a crystal clear truth formed. They had no idea what was coming. After hanging up with Mark, I opened a folder on my computer labeled Evidence. Inside were months of screenshots, text conversations, bank statements, photos, transfers from our parents' retirement fund to cover Chloe's temporary cash flow problems, withdrawals from the home equity line of credit to fund his failed ventures, credit card statements from 5-star hotel stays while Mom begged me to cover the property taxes. My phone lit up again. Mom this time. Please don't be upset, honey. This is really important for Chloe's career. She's finally finding her way. We'll celebrate with you later. Later. Like all those other times, the vacations I wasn't invited to because Chloe needed quality time. The Christmas mornings where my accomplishments were background noise to Chloe's latest scheme. Every time I was asked to tone it down, to take a step back, because Chloe needed the spotlight. But let me tell you about Chloe so you understand who we were dealing with. My younger sister always had a knack for turning her problems into other people's emergencies. At 16, she crashed Dad's car at a party where she had been drinking. Instead of consequences, we got a better car, because she needs to feel safe driving. In college, when she was caught cheating on an important exam, our parents hired an expensive lawyer to protect her future. When she dropped out of law school in her sophomore year, after convincing them to pay $60,000 up front, the excuse was that she was discovering her true passion. And what was that passion? Spending money she didn't have on experiences that built her personal brand. $3,000 trips to entrepreneurship conferences, $500 an hour life coaching sessions, a complete wardrobe of networking clothes that cost more than my 2 months' salary. The pattern was always the same. Chloe would create chaos, our parents would panic, and I would be called in to clean up the mess. When she racked up $20,000 in credit card debt at 22, guess who lent her the money to pay it off? When she got evicted from her fancy apartment because she spent the rent money on a weekend in Vegas, who offered her the couch until she got her act together? But the worst part wasn't the financial emergencies. It was the emotional manipulation that came with them. Every time I hesitated to help, Chloe would shed crocodile tears about how she was trying so hard, and how nobody believed in her. Our parents always fell for it, turning my reasonable reluctance into cruelty. "Is Nicole being hard on you again?" Mom would ask, as if setting boundaries was a character flaw. "She just doesn't understand how the world works today," Chloe would sigh. "It's all about relationships and networking. She still thinks hard work is enough." Hard work. As if my 15 years of building a solid career in tech were some kind of outdated relic. As if saving every penny to buy my first home was luck instead of sacrifice. As if working weekends for years to build my emergency fund was privilege instead of discipline. And all the while, Chloe was posting her cured life on Instagram. Expensive brunches, spontaneous trips, designer handbags, all paid for with family money that should have been safe in a savings account. Our parents, who should have been enjoying a comfortable retirement, were instead walking a financial tightrope because they couldn't say no to her. The turning point came last year when I got that desperate phone call at 2 a.m. "Nicole, we need your help." Dad's voice was broken. "We're losing the house." 52 years in the same house on the lake. The place where I grew up, where I learned to swim, where we spent every Thanksgiving of my childhood. They couldn't afford the mortgage anymore because they had refinanced 3 times to cover Chloe's investment opportunities. I didn't hesitate. I transferred $500,000 the next morning, emptying my brokerage account and selling the small apartment building that had taken me a decade to buy. "It's just temporary," they promised. "We'll pay you back." But temporary never came. Instead of cutting back or making Chloe face real consequences, they carried on as usual. And Chloe, she bought a new Tesla 3 weeks after our conversation about fiscal responsibility. "It's for work," she explained when I questioned her. "It's for work." What I later discovered was that she had put the car in our parents' name to get a better interest rate. Once again, shifting her risks to people who couldn't afford to bear them. Sitting there on that cold December night, reviewing months of documentation of Chloe's financial irresponsibility, I realized something I should have seen years ago. I wasn't helping my family. I was enabling her destruction. Every bailout, every temporary loan, every time I absorbed the consequences of her choices, I only encouraged her to make worse ones. And our parents, terrified of losing her if they set boundaries, had become complicit in her financial ruin. My phone buzzed with another message from Chloe. "Oh, and if you want to contribute to Christmas dinner, I can send you a list of wines that would impress my boss. Nothing too expensive, just about $300 a bottle." $300 a bottle. For a dinner I was being excluded from. Paid for with money from people whose retirement I had financed to save her irresponsibilities. I closed my laptop and smiled for the first time in hours. Mark had sent a message confirming that the papers would be delivered tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, just when Chloe's important guests would be arriving for her sophisticated event. Because what they didn't know was that when I saved their house 6 months ago, my lawyer had insisted on a protective clause. Something just to formalize the agreement, as we explained at the time. Something they signed without reading because they were desperate. And now that insignificant detail was about to turn Chloe's perfect Christmas into the nightmare she deserved. The next morning I woke up to 15 missed messages. They weren't from my parents, they were from Chloe directly. And each one was worse than the last. "Hi sis. Just a reminder that if you want to come over for Christmas, you can bring dessert. Nothing too fancy, maybe a pie from the bakery. We don't want to compete with my gourmet menu. Oh, and if you do come, can you park on the street? My boss is bringing his new Porsche and I need to keep the driveway clear. One last thing. Can you wear that low-key blue dress? You know how pretty you look when you're not trying to get attention." Each message was a calculated jab, disguised as sisterly concern. That was how Chloe always operated. Never a direct attack, always these subtle humiliations that made me question whether I was being too sensitive. But the one that broke me completely came at 9 in the morning. "By the way, I cancelled your contribution to the parents' gift. My boss is paying for a trip to Aspen, and I put my name down as the organizer. They're going to love it. You can get something smaller like a picture frame or something." Trip to Aspen. With her boss's money. While our parents struggled to pay basic bills, Chloe was orchestrating extravagant gifts with other people's money to make herself look like the perfect daughter. I sat in my kitchen with my hands shaking with rage. It wasn't just about Christmas. It was about 15 years of making myself invisible so Chloe could shine. 15 years of absorbing her mistakes, paying her debts, while she got all the credit for finding her way. My phone rang. "Grandma Margaret." "Nicole, honey, your sister called and asked me to convince you not to cause any drama at Christmas." "What drama? What's going on?" And that's when I broke down. I told Grandma Margaret everything. About the $520,000, about the cruel messages, about being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. About finding out that Chloe had opened credit cards in our parents' names without them knowing. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that I thought the call had dropped. Nicole Margaret Coldwell. Grandma's voice was ice cold. "That girl has completely lost her way. And her parents, God help them, they've raised a monster. Grandma, I don't know what to do." "I know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to let that spoiled child learn about consequences. And I'm going to help you." It was then that Grandma Margaret told me something I didn't know. She had been watching Chloe closely for the past few years, documenting behaviors, saving conversations. As a retired businesswoman who had built 3 businesses from the ground up, she recognized patterns of financial manipulation when she saw them. "Your sister asked me for money last month," Grandma revealed. $10,000 for an urgent investment opportunity. When I asked for details, she was evasive. When I said I needed documentation, she got angry. "What did you do?" "I looked into it." "Nicole, this opportunity didn't exist. It was an excuse to get money to pay off credit card debt you don't even know about." My blood ran cold. How many cards? At least 4 that I could identify. All with high limits. All racking up astronomical interest rates. She's financing this lifestyle of appearances with money she doesn't have. I hung up on Grandma Margaret and immediately called Mark, my lawyer. "Mark, I need to speed up the process. And I need a complete financial investigation of my sister. I think we've only scratched the surface. Nicole, if there's suspicion of fraud, that completely changes the nature of the case. I can have the documents ready today." "Do it." That afternoon, while Chloe was probably getting her nails done for her perfect dinner, I was at Mark's office reviewing months of bank transactions he had obtained through legal channels. What we found was devastating. Chloe hadn't just opened credit cards in our parents' names. She had forged signatures on loan documents. There were unauthorized withdrawals from their emergency savings account. There was even a loan against Dad's life insurance that they didn't even know existed. "This is documented fraud," Mark said, organizing the evidence. "If your parents wanted to press charges, she could go to jail. They would never do that." "No, but they don't need to know that yet. This evidence is our guarantee that she'll honor whatever agreement we decide to settle on." I left Mark's office with a folder full of evidence that could destroy Chloe completely. That wasn't what I wanted. Destroying my sister was never the goal. But she had crossed lines I didn't even know existed. That night I got a call from my parents. "Nicole, your sister said you're planning some kind of revenge for Christmas." My mom's voice was heavy with disappointment. "Can't you just accept that sometimes it's not about you?" "It's not about me. Chloe is finally establishing her career. This meeting with her boss is crucial for her. Why can't you support your sister for once?" For once. As if I hadn't spent half my adult life supporting Chloe. "Mom, when was the last time you guys checked your credit card statements? What does that have to do with Christmas? Just check. And call me back." I hung up and looked at the evidence folder on my desk. Grandma Margaret had sent me a message. "Ready to teach some lessons about consequences?" I replied. "More than ready." Then I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Mark. "Execute the plan tomorrow at 2 p.m. And Mark, make sure the documents arrive right when she's welcoming her guests." As I typed, a sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't rushing to clean up Chloe's mess. I was letting the consequences of her actions finally catch up with her. But what she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Because while Chloe was preparing her perfect Christmas dinner, I was organizing something that would change the dynamics of our family forever. And this time there would be no rescue. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. with the clearest mind I'd had in months. While Chloe was probably still asleep, dreaming of her perfect dinner, I was already at my computer organizing the most meticulous operation of my life. The first call was to Mark. "I need 3 things. The house deed delivered today at 2 p.m., a full financial audit of Chloe, and you present during the delivery." "Nicole, are you sure? Once we hand over those papers, there's no turning back." "Mark, she forged our parents' signatures. She took out fraudulent loans. She's stealing their retirement while playing at being a successful businesswoman. The only thing I'm sure of is that this should have happened years ago." The second call was to Grandma Margaret. "I need you to be there today when the papers arrive. Our parents are going to panic and try to talk me out of this." "Honey, I'll be there." "And Nicole, I brought some things I found in your grandfather's office. Documents that might be useful." This intrigued me, but I didn't have time to ask for details. The third call was the most delicate, to my accountant David, who had worked for the family for years. "David, I need a favor. Can you do an independent analysis of my parents' financial situation? Something a judge would consider valid." There was a long pause. "Nicole, how long have you suspected something was wrong?" "Months. But now I have proof. I can have the report ready in 2 hours. And Nicole, based on what I've seen over the past few years, you're doing the right thing." As I organized every detail, my phone kept vibrating with messages from Chloe, each one more revealing than the last. "Sis, my boss is coming home in 3 hours. Can you stop being so dramatic and help me with something at least? By the way, we need to talk about you living so far away. Dad said you don't even visit anymore. What kind of daughter are you?" "Hi. Change of plans. My boss wants to meet the close family, so you can come after all. But come through the back door and don't mention your boring tech job." Back door. In the house I saved from foreclosure. It was 11 in the morning when Mark called me with an update that changed everything. "Nicole, you won't believe what we found out. Your sister didn't just forge bank documents. She created a shell company using your parents' address to get business loans." "How much?" $80,000. "And there's more. She used the house as collateral without their knowledge." I felt the blood drain from my face. Chloe had mortgaged the house I saved to finance her schemes. If something went wrong, our parents could lose everything again. Mark, is that enough for criminal charges? More than enough. It's federal bank fraud. She could get 5 years in prison. I hung up and looked at the clock. 2 hours until the documents were due. 2 hours before Chloe found out that her perfect life was about to come crashing down. My phone rang. Nicole, your sister said you can come over for dinner. She's being very generous considering how difficult you've been lately. Difficult? For asking where the money I lent her was. Mom, did you guys check the bank statements like I suggested? Honey, we don't have time for that today. Chloe needs everything to be perfect to impress her boss. Can you bring flowers? She specified white roses. White roses. To decorate the house I bought to impress people with money she stole. Sure, Mom. I'll be there at 2. At 12:30, I got the call I had been waiting for. David, my accountant. Nicole, I'm sorry. The situation is worse than we thought. Based on the documents I was able to legally access, your parents are technically insolvent. The debts incurred in their name exceed any assets they own, including the house. Especially the house. If all the loans your sister took out were called in today, they would owe more than $70,000 beyond the value of the property. I sat in my armchair, watching Seattle through the panoramic window of my apartment. Below, people walked to their Friday lunches, unaware that at 2 in the afternoon, an entire family would discover that the daughter they adored had orchestrated her own financial ruin. At 1:15, Grandma Margaret arrived at my apartment. I brought those documents I mentioned, she said, placing an old folder on the table. Your grandfather always suspected Chloe had serious problems. He started investigating before he died. Inside the folder were receipts, photographs, handwritten notes. Evidence that Chloe had been lying about jobs, salaries, and achievements for years. It wasn't just recent fraud. It was a pattern of behavior that went back to high school. Grandma, why was I never told about this? Your grandfather wanted to protect the family. He thought she would grow up and change. I told him that some problems don't get better with time. They just get bigger. I glanced at the clock. It was 1:45. Time to go. We arrived at my parents' house at 5:55. Chloe's Tesla was in the driveway, along with a BMW that I assumed belonged to her boss. Through the window, I could see movement. Chloe arranging flowers, Mom setting the table. Mark arrived at exactly 2, carrying a leather briefcase and accompanied by a bailiff. Are you sure? He asked one last time. I looked at the house where I grew up, then at Grandma Margaret, who nodded firmly. Absolutely. As we walked to the front door, I could hear laughter from inside. Chloe was probably telling some charming story about her professional successes, using charm and lies to impress people who didn't know who she really was. Mark rang the doorbell. What Chloe didn't know was that in the next 5 minutes, her carefully orchestrated performance would turn into the most humiliating moment of her life. And unlike all the other times I'd cleaned up her messes, this time I'd be just an observer. The door opened, revealing Chloe in all her performative glory. Beige silk dress, perfectly styled hair, radiant smile that froze the moment she saw Mark and the bailiff. Nicole! Her voice came out higher than normal. What's going on? Chloe Anderson? The officer asked, consulting his documents. Yes, but I have a court order to serve. He held out an official envelope. Related to the property located at 1247 Lakefront Drive. From inside the house, I heard Chloe's boss's voice. Chloe? Is everything okay in there? Chloe's smile was disintegrating in real time. There's been some mistake. This is my parents' house. Actually, Mark interjected, his professional voice echoing through the hallway. This property has belonged to Nicole Caldwell for 6 months. The documents you signed in June were a deed of sale, not a simple loan. It was like watching a domain crumble. Chloe's face went from carefully maintained tan to deathly white. That's impossible, she whispered. Mom, Dad. Our parents appeared, followed by an elegant man in an expensive suit who was obviously the famous chef, and an impeccably dressed blonde woman who had to be his wife. What's going on? Dad asked, looking between me and the documents. Mr. Anderson, Mark began. His daughter Nicole is now the legal owner of this house. The documents you signed included a 6-month grace period. That period expired yesterday. Mom was pale. Nicole, you can't be serious. Completely serious. My voice was calm, almost gentle. You have 2 options. Buy the house back at market value, which is $800,000, or start paying $4,000 a month in rent. Chloe's boss cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe we should leave. No. Chloe turned to him, panic in her eyes. Mr. Mitchell, this is just a family misunderstanding. We can work this out quickly. But Mark wasn't finished. There's also the matter of the fraudulent loans that have been discovered. Chloe, you have taken out $80,000 in commercial loans using this property as collateral, without the knowledge or consent of the legal owners. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the exact moment when Mr. Mitchell realized he was in the middle of a family explosion involving financial fraud. Chloe, his voice was icy, you told me your family had an established real estate business. I do. I mean, we do. Chloe was panicking. Nicole, stop this. You're ruining everything. Actually, Grandma Margaret appeared behind me, carrying her vintage briefcase. We're just getting started, dear. Chloe paled even more. Grandma, what are you doing here? I brought some interesting things I found in your grandfather's papers. Grandma opened the briefcase meticulously. Like this photocopy of a fake birth certificate you used to enroll in college as a needy minor to get scholarships. Mrs. Mitchell sighed audibly. Richard, let's go. Now. And this report from the private investigator your grandfather hired when he suspected you were stealing money from the church account you volunteered for when you were 17. That's not true. Chloe yelled, but her voice was breaking. And my favorite, Grandma continued unperturbed. A recording of a phone call from 2 weeks ago, where you tried to convince me to take Nicole out of my will because she was causing unnecessary problems in the family. Dad turned to Chloe, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine anger in his eyes. You did what? Dad, I can explain. Miss Anderson, Mr. Mitchell interrupted, his voice as sharp as ice. Considering these revelations about your family situation and personal integrity, I need to reconsider your position at the company. Mr. Mitchell, please. The promotion we discussed. Cancelled. In fact, I'd like you to clear your desk by Monday morning. And that's when Chloe completely broke down. Nicole, she screamed. You ruined my life. No, I replied calmly. You ruined your own life. I just failed to clean up the mess. Mark glanced at his watch. You have until January 15th to make a decision about the property. After that date, the eviction process will begin automatically. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell were already backing away toward their car. Chloe, he said coldly, don't bother coming in on Monday. As they hurried out, Chloe turned to our parents with tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. You're not going to let her do this to me. But Dad was looking at the documents in his hands, his expression hardening with every page. Chloe, how many loans did you take out in our name? That doesn't matter right now. How many? His voice echoed through the house in a way I had never heard before. Mom was sitting on the stairs crying. All our savings. Our retirement. It's all gone. It was Grandma Margaret who broke the final silence. Nicole, honey, you have a decision to make right now. All eyes turned to me. At that moment, I had the power to completely destroy my sister. I could press criminal charges, publicly expose every fraud, every lie, every manipulation of the last 15 years. Or I could do something different. Chloe, I said slowly, you have a choice. We can settle this as a family, or we can settle this in court. She looked at me with an expression that mixed desperate hope with absolute terror. But if we choose family, I continued, the rules change forever. Chloe looked at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her unmade-up face. For the first time in 15 years, I saw my little sister behind all the performance. Family, she whispered. I choose family. Then let's set some rules, I replied, my voice firm but not cruel. First, you're going to enter a financial rehabilitation program. 3 months in a closed facility, no cards, no cash, no outside contact. Nicole. Second, I continued, you're going to pay back every penny you stole from our parents. We're going to sell your Tesla, your designer handbags, your jewelry. Everything. Dad raised his head. What about the house? You have 2 options. You can buy it back for $600,000, $300,000 below market value, or you can pay rent of $2,500 a month. How are we going to get $600,000? Mom asked, still in shock. Grandma Margaret answered. With the money Chloe is paying back, plus the sale of her assets, plus a loan I'm going to take out, with interest and adequate collateral this time. Over the next 3 months, our family underwent the most painful and necessary transformation of our lives. Chloe entered a rehabilitation program in Portland, where she had to face not only her money problems, but also the pattern of manipulation that had dominated our family dynamics for decades. Our parents, finally forced to face financial reality, sold most of their belongings and moved into a smaller home they could afford. Dad, at 62, went back to work part-time as a freelance accountant. Mom got a job at a department store. For the first time in years, they were living within their means. During this time, I received weekly calls from Chloe at the rehab center. The first few were filled with anger and accusations. You ruined my life, she screamed during the second week. I lost my job, my friends, everything. You ruined your own life, I replied calmly. I just stopped cleaning up your messes. But gradually something changed. By the 6th week, she called me in tears. Nicole, the therapists made me write a list of all the people I've hurt financially. The list is 3 pages long. 3 pages of people who trust me and who I've betrayed. How do you feel about that? Ashamed, scared, but also relieved. It's weird to say, but stopping the lying is exhausting. Keeping all those stories straight, remembering who said what. I'm tired of being that person. By week 10, she told me she'd found a part-time job at the front desk of the center, $15 an hour. It's the first honest job I've ever had, she admitted. And you know what? When I get paid at the end of the week, I know exactly how much I earned and how. There are no schemes, no stories to remember. It's simple. When Chloe left the program, she was unrecognizable. Not physically. Although she had cut her hair and stopped wearing heavy makeup, it was her behavior that had completely changed. At our first family gathering after her departure, she arrived driving a 2010 Honda Civic she had purchased with her own savings. It's not the prettiest, she said, patting the steering wheel, but it's mine. All mine. During dinner, she presented a detailed payment plan for every debt she had incurred. These weren't token amounts. It was a real schedule based on her new job as an administrative assistant at an accounting firm. It'll take 8 years to pay it all off, she said, looking directly at me. But I'll pay every penny. Dad, who had been visibly tense throughout the meal, finally relaxed. I'm proud of you, Chloe. For the first time in a long time, I'm truly proud. But the biggest transformation wasn't Chloe's. It was our parents'. Mom, who had always been the first to make excuses for Chloe, now set clear boundaries. When Chloe mentioned wanting a better apartment than the studio she could afford, Mom simply said, "Then work for it." Dad, who used to panic whenever Chloe had a financial crisis, now responded with practical offers of help instead of money. "I can teach you how to budget," he offered. "But I'm not going to pay your bills." As for me, I discovered something surprising along the way. Revenge had been satisfying, but it wasn't what healed me. The healing came from seeing my family finally functioning in a healthy way. 2 years after Document Christmas, as we came to call that day, I got a message from Chloe on a Sunday morning. "Want to have lunch today? My treat." We met at a small cafe she had carefully chosen because it fit her budget. She had been promoted to supervisor at the accounting firm and was saving for a night class in business administration. "I have something for you," she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a handwritten letter. "Nicole," she had written, "this is the first payment on the emotional debt I owe you. I can't give you back the 15 years I stole from your peace of mind, but I can spend the rest of my life proving that I've learned my lesson. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved to be given up on." I looked at my younger sister, who now seemed more mature than me in many ways. "Chloe, you don't owe me any money." "I owe you much more than money," she replied. "But this is a start." Today, 3 years later, our family has a completely different dynamic. Our parents live comfortably in their smaller home, with a balanced budget and a modest but secure retirement. Chloe is in her senior year of business school, still paying off her debts religiously, still driving the same Honda Civic. And me, I bought a smaller house in Seattle, one that truly makes me happy instead of just impressing others. I use some of the money left over from the sale of my parents' house to fund scholarships for young women in technology. Grandma Margaret calls me every week to talk about the businesses she's helping to run at 92. "You did the right thing, honey," she told me during our last conversation. Sometimes the greatest act of love is forcing someone to grow up. Last Christmas, we all gathered at my parents' small house. Chloe brought a cake she had baked herself. A simple cake, nothing fancy, but made with her own hands and her own money. As we watched Dad cut the cake, I realized that we finally had what we always wanted. A real family. Not the performative version Chloe had orchestrated for years, with expensive gifts and perfect appearances. A family where people cared enough about each other to tell the truth, set boundaries, and demand growth. "Nicole," Chloe said as we washed dishes together, "you saved our family." "No," I replied, drying a plate. "I just stopped allowing it to be destroyed." The lesson I learned is that sometimes loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions. It means refusing to be the emotional doormat that absorbs all the drama. It means understanding that peace without boundaries isn't peace. It's just silence disguised as harmony. If you're reading this story and recognize yourself as someone who always cleans up other people's messes, know this: you're not helping. You're enabling. And enabling destructive behavior isn't love. It's fear disguised as kindness. My sister needed me to say no. My parents needed to face the financial reality they had created. And I needed to learn that my value wasn't in being the constant savior of my family. Today, when Chloe calls me, it's to share good news about a promotion she earned on her own, or to ask for advice on investments she can make with money she's actually earned. When my parents call me, it's to talk, not to ask for emergency financial bailouts. And when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who has learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's the most loving thing you can do. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's forcing them to rebuild themselves the right way.
Wow, Nicole. What an incredible transformation for the whole family. It's amazing how setting boundaries can change everything. Thank you for sharing this powerful story with us. And you, listener, have you ever been through something similar? Leave a comment telling us about your experience. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Story Threads podcast channel for more stories of overcoming adversity like this one. See you next time.